All right, guys. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about buyer representation. One of the most important things when you become an agent is being able to figure out what is working best for you and then double or triple down on that thing. And I will tell you that when I became a buyer's agent and I realized, okay, once people get pre-qualified, they make a decision to make an offer on the property. The rest of it was very controllable. Like you could then go through the process. But until you were able to make an offer after getting them pre-qualified, you didn't know. Everything was so up in the air, so questionable as to whether it would ever become a contract. And so this is one of the reasons why newer agents will have a tendency to get almost like commission breath, like just make an offer, just make an offer. I think we should make an offer on this one. And this reason why you're called a salesman, right? Is because you're trying to sell them on a specific house. But I think the better way to go about it is to you basically front load all of the expectations in the very, very beginning by sitting down with them and actually being a professional. You're going to have a tendency when you're new because you have imposter syndrome and you think, you don't have any sales. So somehow that means that you shouldn't have as much respect as the person who's a top producer or whatever. But the reality is what you need to do is you need to sit down with that new buyer and find out exactly what it is that they're looking for. Now, the way that you do this is you say, hey, however you met them, whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody else, you have that conversation with them. You say, hey, I would love to meet with you for 30, 45 minutes and talk about specifically what it is you're looking for. And then that way I can really put my team to work. Now, even if you don't have a team yet, you really need to start having a mindset like you have a team. Your team could simply be a virtual assistant that you pay one day a week, right? Your team could be an admin that you share with another agent, right? Your team could be another agent that you guys help each other and you guys prospect together, you guys work together, you do open houses together, whatever it is. But you set it in your mind so that when you're having these conversations, you say, so I can get me and my team to work for you to get you the absolute exact house that you're looking for, at least as close as we can, right? And have that conversation with them. So what you do is you sit down and you say, hey, I'm going to go over a few things with you. You make it like an official sit down, like even if it's on Zoom. You say, listen, I'm going to put a lot of effort into making sure we get the right home for you. So I want to sit down and go over everything. Now I have a checklist that I'm going to include. I included in the top producer program, which is essentially my buyer's agent masterclass, teaching you how to just dominate your local market as a top producer, knowing how to become that local celebrity, teaching you how to do the mighty open house system, teaching you how to do the first time home buyer seminar where you partner with a mortgage officer and a credit repair specialist, teaching you how to become basically a local celebrity. And I'm really excited. That's our flagship course right now. And the next big course program is going to be the Rainmaker program, where I focus on teaching you how to get listings. All right. So first of all, when you're working with buyers and you're trying to do this, you're going to sit down with them and you're going to find out, do they want a 2-story? Do they want a 1-story? What neighborhood? Why do they want that neighborhood? If they say well, I want a certain neighborhood, is it because of school? Or is it just because it has a pool? All the houses in that neighborhood have a pool and they saw it on Google Earth. Why? And so you want to get really down. If you use a checklist that I have that I include in the top producer program, you're going to be able to actually just check off each and every one of the things and ask those questions. It makes it really easy for you. Plus they see that you're writing things down as you're asking questions, and that will tend to make people have more patience with you. Now, once you've spent all this time asking them questions, finding out exactly what they want, and then asking follow-up questions to make sure you know exactly what they want a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, let's say a 4-bedroom, 2-story house with 2 bathrooms and then a half bath downstairs. They want the master bedroom to be downstairs, the rest of the rooms upstairs, right? Like some people are very specific about this. They may need to go get a brand new house. You might need to take them to a new home builder that has, plans that you could look at on Zoom or in person and choose one of these builders. That might be the thing for them if they're super specific about what they want. But by the end of that meeting, you need to have a plan. There's some people that their brokerage allows them to charge a $5,000 retainer. And then that retainer gets credited back to the buyer and you get a percentage at closing. You still get a percentage at closing. And if for some reason the listing agent doesn't offer any compensation to the buyer's agent, then you can go ahead and keep that $5,000 retainer. So you're at least always getting paid. That is one of the methods that I'm going to teach in the Top Producer program. But the traditional buyer, listing agent offering or the seller, I should say, offering a compensation to the buyer is not going to go away. It just can't be listed on the MLS. So if that's something you're thinking about, or is this updated enough to understand that it is? Things are constantly changing and ongoing, and so we don't have all the details right now. But as of the recording of this in July of 2024, that's where we're at. So. Also, I'm going to include some contracts inside of the Top Producer program, but you need to know that every state has different requirements. Every single state is a little bit different. A purchase and sale agreement in Florida has specific Florida language versus New Mexico. Sometimes I know in New Mexico, I do some deals and it's just a real estate contract, they call it. It's not a purchase and sale agreement. It's just a real estate contract. There is a purchase and sale agreement, but it's completely different. So you have to, lean on your broker for a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay. So what I want to talk to you about is buyer representation. When you're representing a buyer, you sit down with them, everything that it is that they are looking for in a house. You are now properly equipped to represent them. Until ink hits the paper, you do not represent them. I'm going to say it again. Until ink hits the paper, you do not represent them. If you sit down with them, you have a great conversation with them, they're like, yes, please find us a house. And then tomorrow they sit down with another person. And then they sit down with another person. Think about this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone telling another complaining on Facebook or social media about a family member who bought with a different agent, right? The people who are in your life are not necessarily going to be loyal to you, right? You actually have to be loyal to you and you have to put in the work. And so you meet people and you give them value and you show them that you're willing to solve the problems that they have. They're going to use you when it comes time to buying a house. Okay. So that's the first thing. The next thing that I really want to drive home with you guys is the idea that once you've met with them, once you have an idea what they're looking for, is the process of making an offer. So this is super powerful when you're representing a buyer. And I'm going to talk way more about this in the Top Producer program. But just while you're getting started here as a new agent, if you're getting Zillow leads, okay, I'm going to give you the short script when it comes to any type of online lead. Okay, there's new rules now that say you have to get something signed before you can expect a commission and represent a buyer and go show a house. Okay, so what I suggest is, and your broker will give you more guidance on this. Okay, you need to look at your broker on this. But what I suggest is having something set up in DocuSign or whatever type of signing system that your brokerage uses, DigiSign, stuff like this. Have a template set up that you could quickly edit from your phone and email to them and get them to sign it. Because you'll be surprised how easy it is when somebody calls and says, if you're getting a lead, and I know a lot of these online lead programs are shutting down because it's becoming illegal for buyer's agents to show homes without a buyer brokerage agreement. And so how does it make any sense that someone could click call agent and it goes to some random agent instead of the actual listing agent? It doesn't make any sense. And so we're going back to a time where back the way that it used to be is where whatever brokerage had the listing, that's the brokerage you would call. So you're only dealing with the listing agent. Okay. Or a buyer's agent in that office who's going to represent the buyer, and they just have decided. And so inside the brokerage, they will be making those decisions, which is interesting. It's going to change a lot of things. So once you've got, let's say you get a phone call from somebody and they say, yeah, I'm interested in the house over at 123 Main Street. There's three main things that you want to ask them. Okay. You want to write this down or pause and, re-listen to this, right? Save it somehow. First one is when you first talk to them, you say, okay, great. How long have you been looking for a house? What you're actually trying to find out is, are they represented already? And if they don't come out right and say, yeah, my agent and I, we saw this house, my agent sent me this. Because if they already have an agent, you can tell them, okay, then go ahead and reach out to your agent and your agent will be able to give you more details. I would love to help you, but if you're already represented by an agent, I can't help you. I'm not the listing agent. Say, oh, okay, that's the safest way to go. Okay, there's other people I know do something different, but that's the safest way to go. And then once you find out that maybe they don't have an agent, you say, okay, well, I would love to talk to you about this more, and we could potentially meet out at the house. But I'm going to need to send you a buyer broker agreement saying that I'm going to show you the house. Simple as that. They go, okay, yeah, no problem. You'd be like, yeah. And so I have a couple more questions. So just get that out of the way. Get them to say yes, they'll sign it. And then you say, okay, and then I have a couple more questions. Are you currently working? No, I'm not working right now. Oh, okay. All right, no problem. By the way, if they're not working, they're probably not pre-qualified, but they could have cash. I had a lot of in Orlando, I had a lot of buyers who just straight up paid cash. So don't assume just because they don't have a job that they can't buy a house. Okay. All right. So that's the first one. And the next one is, all right, do you have money for a down payment? Now you're going to know. You say, how much do you have for a down payment? And then they tell you, oh, I'm paying cash. We're going to buy the property outright. Right. I had a lot of people that would say, especially investors, oh no, we're going to pay cash. I say, okay. And if you're going to pay cash, I don't have to ask them, do they know their credit? If they say, yeah, we got about 3,000 or 4,000 for down payment. I'm like, okay, it's not enough, but okay. In my mind, I'm like, okay. So then I go, and do you know what your credit score is? I don't say, what is your credit score? I say, do you know your credit score? Right? Because now if they say, yes, I do, say, okay, perfect. All right, well, I'm going to send you this agreement over so that we can go ahead and schedule to meet at the house. And they say, okay, I need to be doing this on my phone. Okay, I need to be doing this. I had some weird computer thing happen just now. I need to be doing this on the phone while I'm talking to them. Okay. And then they're going to receive it. Did you get it? I sent it to your email. Yes. They now sign it. And then you now have the agreement. And now you say, okay, what time would you like to meet at the property? Guys, if you do this right, you could potentially have a contract. Or you would have a buyer broker agreement signed. You meet out at the property. They love the property. They want you to submit an offer today. The offer gets accepted today or tomorrow. And in 30 to 90 days, 60 days, something like that. I usually say 30 days. You have a closing. So sometimes these buyer leads, especially if you're with a team and they're kicking you leads, they could potentially result. This is how it worked for me. I got these leads initially and I was trying to just do marketing and I did not really cold call at all. And I got some of these leads and realtor.com and Zillow leads, and they were effective. And I know they're going away, but I wanted to give you this script of how to go through this because it's very effective. If you just go meet someone out at the house with no buyer broker agreement signed, I know you might build a little bit of rapport with them, but with the new laws coming out, you will be breaking the law. You won't have any true commitment from them. They're going to get in their car. It's not the house they're looking for, and they're going to leave. Why? Because you don't have another carrot to show them. You didn't build any kind of commitment, and you don't have another house yet that they're interested in. So they are one track mind. Okay, I'm done with you. And they leave and they're done with you, period. So let's assume that you do, however you get one, you make an offer. My preferred way is to get a list of investors who are always looking to buy, no matter when, no matter how. They always have cash or access to additional cash if you find the right deal. And that's one of my favorite buyer types. And so you just find the right deal and you make it a goal to get more and more investors so that you can actually submit a contract every day for one of these investors. They say, Mike, if you find the deal, submit the contract. If it gets accepted, I will close on it. If it's in this neighborhood for this price, this size of house, and I have this much profit margin potential, then I'll buy it. Those are the best kind of customers. Okay. But if you're just, networking and you're teaching what I teach in Top Producer, which is to go out and be a local celebrity, and you're getting people to call you from your YouTube channel type of stuff, this is very effective, what I'm teaching you right now. Okay. So let's say you get one you submit an offer. If you think that the property is going to get a ton of interest, what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to have an inspector. You have a few inspectors, but have one that's like your best friend. And you go out there with him and you guys submit a 0-day inspection report if the house is tip top. Why do you need to do a 10-day inspection period? If your buyer is truly pre-qualified, which you need to be making sure that these buyers are truly pre-qualified and some underwriting has been done. Okay. Super important. You also, during your buyer broker agreement, you're telling them, hey, do not buy anything. Right? We're buying a house. Do not use your credit. Do not go out and buy anything with credit because it will mess up your home purchase. These are things in the checklist that you got to go over. So, all right. So you submit the offer, 0-day inspection. If there's a bunch of other offers, you're going to win. Why? Because it's a sure thing. And if it doesn't go through for some reason, because your buyer didn't perform, because the financing didn't work or whatever, they get to keep the earnest money deposit, which is $3,000 to $5,000 somewhere in there, right? So being a listing agent, I know this. Even if I think that it isn't necessarily the best offer, but it is a very competitive offer, and I know for sure it's going to close, or my seller's getting $3,000 cash or $5,000 cash, we're accepting the offer. I'm going to present it to my seller. The seller's going to go, yeah, but maybe I can make an extra 5 on these other people. You have to understand, with a 0-day inspection report, we just passed the first level of negotiations immediately upon accepting the offer. So as a buyer's agent, you understand that. Now, I don't recommend doing this every time. If it's more of a buyer's market, which it is right now, submitting a 0-day inspection report isn't really necessary. You can submit a 10-day, have your inspector go out, take your sweet time, make your offer. Why? Because there's nobody else making an offer. You're the only person. So there's no need to be so aggressive. I'm just telling you how I've submitted offers on properties that were very competitive in the past, and it works, highly effective. Okay, the next time, probably the next process as you're going through this, is the financing contingency, right? The financing and inspection or appraisal. So once you've passed inspection, right, you get to a point, usually that's 10 days, something like that, right? By the way, I forgot to mention, hopefully you already have a pre-approval, but in the Florida contracts, it says that if you don't have pre-approval, you have to submit for pre-approval within 5 days of the offer getting accepted, which is not really a factor if you're doing business the way I teach, because I think you should have that already done before you make your offer. But there's some people who are just writing offers out there and they haven't submitted to any kind of lender to purchase the house, which is crazy, but it happens. And so your contract becomes null and void. Some people are like, well, I want to see the pre-approval. I want to see underwriting and stuff like that. As a listing agent, I've asked for that, and I've gotten kickback from the buyer. Be like, well, we haven't even come to closing yet, or we haven't even come to the financing contingency. Yeah, but we need to be able to know that you actually submitted for pre-approval. We don't want to waste our time here. If you haven't submitted for approval from a lender, then the contract is void after 5 days, right? So anyway, so then inspection period, if you set an inspection period, 5, 10, 15 days, right? Once that before that inspection period is over, you can literally cancel for any reason. You got to read the contract. Every state's a little different, but for any reason, you could cancel. You know what? I just don't like the way the neighborhood looks. Whatever it is, you can just cancel. This is one of the reasons to go ahead and have an inspection period, by the way. Right? Especially if there's no competition. Okay. So the next thing is you past your inspection period. Now you're going to get to appraisal, right? Appraisal is so important that the appraisal actually goes through. Appraisal and financing sometimes happen around the same time, but appraisal is so important because let's say the house, you submitted an offer for 320, and when the appraisal comes back, it comes back at 320. I'm sorry, at 300. So you submitted for 320, that's the purchase price and the offer, what you offered. But when you you actually have an inspection period, but the inspection period is now passed. You did not ask for anything because the house was nice. Okay. And then you get to the appraisal and you find out that the appraiser says it's only worth 300. Okay. This is a point of negotiation, just like with inspection though. Like when you went through the inspection period, if during the inspection you found out that the AC was old, you needed like $10,000 worth of work, you would ask for the $10,000, and the listing agent and seller would often come back and say half it with you, and say, well, we won't give you $10,000 off, but we'll give you five. So as a experienced buyer's agent, I had many times asked for 20 because I knew that they would often go half, which is 10, and I would still get my buyer what they want. Okay. And so there's it hasn't worked every time, but more times than not, right? It worked that way. And they're like 20,000. I'm like, well, yeah, if we want a brand new AC, we want a brand new, this is why an inspection report is so important. But let's say you didn't ask for anything in inspection. You didn't ask for anything in multifamily. We call it retrading. But let's say you didn't ask for any of that. When you get to appraisal and he says it's only worth 300 and your offer is 320, you still offered 320. So unless you did an appraisal contingency as an addendum, you have to your buyer has to come up with that other 20. Okay. Now there's certain points in the contract, like if it's an FHA loan or a VA loan, there's extra protections in place where even if the appraisal comes in low, the lender won't pay more than what it's worth, right? And there's a certain percentage that you have to come up with as a buyer as well, so you can potentially get out of it with those types of loans. But without those types of loans, and you're coming in with a conventional loan, and you offered 320, and the appraiser says it's only worth 300, you got to come up with that 20. And so oftentimes they'll be you as a buyer's agent, you're trying to protect your buyer. So you'll submit an appraisal contingency. Hey, if it doesn't appraise, then we will only our offer then changes automatically to whatever the new appraisal amount is. You can set that. The other thing you can do, which is a really ninja trick in a really competitive market, is to offer 320 and with an escalation clause up to 340, or what's really ninja that I've done is an escalation clause. There's a different addendum with an escalation clause that says I will offer $1,000 over the highest other offer that is on the table. Now that's really, really competitive, because sometimes what happens is people will offer just random amounts and you have no idea how much they're offering. But because you have an escalation clause, sometimes, not always, some listing agents have no idea what they're doing, and they're like, what's an escalation? No, just give us an offer. Just give us your highest and best, is what they say. But an escalation clause is very, very smart sometimes, because if you think the listing agent understands what it is, because what happens is you'll offer an amount, and even if they offered 20,000 over, your buyer's only paying $1,000 more than the other person. It's not like they're going crazy, right? So anyway, back to appraisals. Appraisal contingency, you can say, we will pay up to $5,000 over appraisal. You can say that as well. You can be specific in there. So the way that negotiation of this works is you would say, you would reach out to, as a buyer's agent, I'd reach out to the listing agent and go, hey, it came back at 300. What do you want to do? How do you want to solve this? And they're going to go, well, is your buyer, if they're a smart listing agent, they're going to put it back on you and say, well, is your buyer prepared to pay an extra 20,000? Because my seller thinks that the property is worth 320 and they do not want to take less than 320. And so you can say, well, depending on what happened during the inspection, if you did ask for money during the inspection, you can say, well, how about we go ahead and pay the 320, but you don't have to give us the, you can offset it. If you were going to get some money because of inspection, you can cancel some of that out. You can try to tip the scale and balance it based on what happened during the inspection. So while you're doing an appraisal, the most common thing that happens is that they will meet in the middle. That's the most common thing. They'll say, well, the appraiser says it's worth 300. We're willing to come up to 310. They'll put an extra $10,000 in, and then they'll just get it out in equity later. And All that means is the seller has to say, okay, we'll take $10,000 less, right? That's all that means. So they are losing $10,000 because of the appraisal. But in all reality, the appraisal is coming back. It's like a very forensic look at how much the property should be worth. Some appraisers, I don't know what markets, but I've heard that some appraisers just do a drive-by and they look online to see what other homes sold for. So as a good listing agent, I go over this in the Rainmaker program inside the Mighty Mentorship, is you need to have some type of a packet or an email that you share with that appraiser saying, hey, I don't know what all you're going to consider here, but I want to make sure you know these are some of the items in the property that you want to consider. It has an extra shop. Inside the shop is a bunch of equipment that's going with the property because it's attached to the shop. It's worth $20,000, right? So it's very unique, but it still makes the property worth more money. Or, hey, there's a pool with a gazebo, right? In Florida, there's a lot of, netted in, framed in things because of bugs. They'll frame in the pools, right? So this makes the property worth more money, right? There's a giant concrete slab over here that is now a part of the property, which actually makes it worth more money because it's concrete. It's more taxable space on the property. And because it's concrete, it's permanent. So all of these things play into it, and you can actually get a reappraisal if you think the first appraisal is bad. The last thing is a financing contingency. It's usually 5 to 10 days, depending on the state, before closing that the HUD statement needs to be sent out. There needs to be a statement sent out to both agents, to the seller and buyer, so that they can review all of the information before closing. Okay. And they can look at it and see what your commissions are. They can look at it and see what, how much they're paying title, how much the insurance is, different things, taxes, everything, before closing. If your buyer has not reviewed this and they show up to closing and want to review every single line, it's because you did not properly prepare them. As a buyer's agent, you need to either do a Zoom or sit down with them and explain to them, or at least review with them, hey, here's the closing paperwork, right? At least the HUD part where it breaks down line by line. And then when you get there, there'll be other papers and stuff, but these are the numbers. If any of these numbers look weird, let's talk about them, right? There's nothing worse than showing up to closing and having somebody be like, what's this? Why am I paying that? What's the 10,000 here, 20,000 here, right? Like, they should understand. And as a listing agent, it's a no brainer, right? Because you do a seller net sheet when you actually get the listing and you show them how much they're going to get at closing. They already know, right? They already know, especially if you talk about seller concessions and stuff like that, what the opportunity is and offering a concession to the buyer's agent and things like that. You should have that conversation up front. And I talk about that in the Rainmaker program inside of the Mighty Mentorship. So the financing contingency, if for some reason the financing falls through, all right, that's the very last time. If for some reason the financing falls through, sometimes you'll need to negotiate an extension on closing. All right. And this is often where you can run into situations where the listing agent's like, no, we're not extending. Okay. And so this is where you can put that in your offer, your offer, your purchase and sale agreement. You could put that as an item in the bottom. You can say, it will extend closing date 1 week at a time if title, per title. I've never done it that way, but I've seen it done that way, and I can see where it can be effective, because sometimes what the listing agent will say is, hey, we'll extend it another 2 weeks for an additional $3,000 escrow. We want to know that you're serious. So now you're on the line for another $3,000, right? And so these kind of negotiations as an agent, this is really your job, is to understand the points of negotiation as they come, and to prepare your buyer on the buy side, to prepare your buyer for these things. All right. In the next video, I'm going to talk about, as a listing agent, if you do get a listing, how different it is, and how similar it can be, but how you're representing an entire different, it's like a whole different world. Because as a buyer's agent, you're trying to get that property. I can't tell you how many times where I made an offer We came back in, we found a bunch of things that were wrong with it. We negotiated during inspection a whole bunch of money off, $10,000 off at closing. And I always said, credit, buyer and seller agree in the addendum. Say buyer and seller agree to credit the buyer $10,000 at closing, period. And then they initial it, right? And what I've often found is that then I get to the appraisal. We find out that the property is not worth what they thought it was. So then we meet in the middle again. And so not only is it $10,000 that we're getting at closing, but we're also getting it for $5,000 cheaper. And then when we get to the financing contingency, hopefully the conventional, we've already done a pre-approval, we've already done some underwriting, and so we don't have a problem there. So when we actually get to closing, I had one client that was had a VA loan, which means that they don't pay private mortgage insurance. They don't have to put any money down. And so the guy and his wife ended up getting the property, really nice house on a big property. And he got $10,000 in the bank on the day of closing. Can you imagine? You get a house for free, basically. You didn't have to pay any money at all. And then you actually have $10,000 in your pocket. Crazy. Because the seller pays a lot of fees in most states. They pay all the fees, the closing fees and stuff like that. And then, he may have paid a little bit of money to title for the end of year taxes. But the point is, if you understand how to negotiate for your client, they can actually get a house that they're looking for and come away with a huge win. And that's what I want for you and I want for your clients. And if you're a new agent, you're watching this, just know that these things are real. And as you get out there, you're going to learn the hard way. And I hope that this makes it a little bit easier for you. All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next video.